We are Ole Miss Rebels. As Mississippi's flagship university, we dig deeper, see farther, work harder. We pioneered human organ transplants. We helped prove Einstein's theory of gravitational waves. We are conducting life-changing research that solves the problems of today. We are Ole Miss, transforming lives and the world.
Hey, welcome to the POMcast with Stephen Willis. We're going to start in a few minutes, but I want to tell you to hit up our social sites, retweet, share, comment, like, do all of that stuff. It can only help us out and it'll make the show even better. But we're getting ready to give you a lot of good Ole Miss information, and I just thought I would tell you that because the POMcast is starting. Well, it's starting right now. Wait, no, that's a little early. It is starting right about now. Hey, good morning. Welcome to this Tuesday edition of the POMcast. I'm your host, Stephen Willis. We got a jam-packed show today. Today is the Know Thy Enemy episode. But first, we want to tell you about Travel and Cruise World. That's 1-800-330-7461. Again, that's 1-800-330-7461. We wanted to provide an avenue for you to, a resource for you to manage your vacation. Everybody needs a vacation. We're 18 months into this time. You can give these guys a call. They can tell you what's going on with masks, all the rules that are changing back and forth, and make sure your vacation is perfect as possible. They can even get you the same price you can get online and the added resources because they're paid from the parks. So all the businesses down here, give them a use, give them a call, and they will be able to help you out. Down below, you can see the podcast that we are appearing on. That's Positively Ole Miss. If you want to search it, leave a 5-star review. You can say whatever you want to. Just leave a 5-star review. That'll help with the algorithm and allow others to find the podcast more easily. Also, if you want to watch the show, you can catch us on Twitter at the Stephen Willis or at Ole Positively. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/POMcast, and we're on YouTube at Positively Ole Miss. Search Positively Ole Miss. You'll not only subscribe and hit the bell. You'll not only know that we're streaming, you'll know what we're streaming about. And even if you watch it on other avenues, this is the place to go for the notification system because they're really good at what they do. We're also on Twitch at Positively Ole Miss, all one word, all lowercase. I think that is about it. All right. Today we're going to start our look into Texas A&M. And the Aggies coming to Oxford and what you can expect from Texas A&M. First of all, it's a team that doesn't score a lot of points. They average about 28 points a game. That's about 4 touchdowns, but they're only giving up about 14.7 because their defense is elite, and especially their defensive line. So that's the weapon that you have to come into this game trying to figure out how to neutralize. Now, I'm expecting Ole Miss to run a ton of screens. I'm expecting a bunch of jets and a bunch of tempo. As fast as they've gone, I think they're going to go this game because they want to do that to wear out the defensive line from A&M and make them less effective. So look for that as it goes. But they're averaging 28.64, 14.7 against. Quarterback is Zach Calzada. He's 130 for 237. That's only a 54% completion percentage. He's thrown for 1,500 yards, 12 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. That makes sense. I mean, he's a young guy. He's a redshirt sophomore. He had 2 moments at home, and it's important to realize that they happened at home against Auburn and against Alabama. One where they led a game-winning drive, and the other where he kind of came back and took over, even though there was no offensive touchdown scored. So, passing-wise, they are average to below average. Okay? Average to below average. Now, running the ball, Isaiah Spiller's run for 873. Devin Achane has run for 706, both of which have 6 touchdowns or 5 touchdowns rushing. Both have a touchdown receiving. They each have 19 to 22 catches out of the backfield, so they use their backs quite a bit. So that's something to pay attention to and keep an eye on. Aeneas Smith is a weapon for them in the receiving game. He's caught the ball 35 times, and Jalen Weidemeyer, the tight end, has caught the ball 30. So that's where they're going to go. They're going to try to get the ball to Aeneas Smith. They're going to try to get the ball to Jalen Weidemeyer, and they're going to use those 2 running backs. And if you can slow them down. Now, everybody looks at the Liberty game of what was going on, and that was a terrible thing in the second half of the defense. Well, the positive of that is Liberty was taking about 7 minutes to score a touchdown. They didn't have time to come back. They didn't have time to win this game because you needed to kind of go faster, and it was taking like 7 minutes per drive to do it. And they weren't able to do that. They started making mistakes because they started playing faster. Because remember, in all team sports, the idea is to make the opponent play faster than they can competently do. If you play down to their level, that's the reason there's upsets. If you play down to their level to where they're comfortable, they can do what they do. But if you speed them up to a point where they're uncomfortable, your talent will win out because the better players can play the game at a faster speed. And that's just the way college football and any team sport goes, especially something like soccer. So you speed up the other team to a point where they are uncomfortable, and then all of a sudden you can exploit them. You have MAs and all things like that. And that's just football. So each player has a strength of what they want. Let's take a defensive lineman, McKinley Jackson at Texas A&M. There is a certain way that he wants to play the game. There is a weakness that he is going to go through. Is it tempo? Is it lateral movement? Things like that affect the defense as a whole because it's going to force, if you can do it, a safety to come up. So it's important to kind of work from the line of scrimmage out with your offense. Because if you can make that defensive line less effective by what you're doing, like I said, I expect screens, I expect jet sweeps, and I expect tempo. That is going to be the order of the day when it comes to Ole Miss's offense. I also expect receivers to potentially come back, and I expect Matt Corral to run the ball a little bit more. They're going to be a little bit more healthy than they were last week. Now, if they didn't play last week, they'd be even more healthy, but it is what it is. So I expect a better version of what we saw against Liberty, which was a better version than what we saw against Auburn because of all the injuries. So if Dontario Drummond can come back, we'll see if he can do that. If he can come back with Braylon Sanders, you've got two of the three, and all of a sudden you can work a little bit. Braylon Sanders and Dontario on the outside, John Rice and Decour in the inside. Two players that have 100-yard games this year, by the way. Dennis Jackson providing depth. All of a sudden the offense looks a little bit more like it normally does. On the running backs and on the offensive line, I expect them to improve a little bit more and do what they need to do. It's no mistake they moved Jalen Cunningham over against Liberty because the receivers going out, they needed a road grader. He started when Rich Rod was here. He was a road grader at left guard, and they put him in there to do that. He opened up the hole for Jerry Neely's untouched touchdown. It is what it is. They were planning on basically a heavy dose of running the ball that turned into pass reads in the RPO. Matt Corral kind of started feeling good. You could see him limping a little bit in the second half, but you can tell he wasn't feeling terrible. He's getting used to what's going on, and Braylon as well. Braylon had the drop earlier, caught the ball later on. I figure he's going to have an expanded role as well this week. So if they can get a little bit of Dontario Drummond back, they get Braylon Sanders. You got the guy on the inside. You can kind of start working with what you expected, and then they're working on getting Mingo back, who might be back for the Egg Bowl, might be back this week, might be back for the bowl game. Who knows? But it is what it is. But A&M is the best defensive line that Ole Miss will see, period. They're not playing Georgia. This unit is better than the Alabama unit. Now, remember how it was against the Alabama unit. It's important. I mean, it's all the way back to September. It's almost a month. But remember how that looked. Because there's some matchups that need to be won at the line of scrimmage. We need to figure out which direction to go, especially when calling plays in the run game. Are we running away from Leal? Are we running at Leal? I don't know exactly how this is going to go because this is some dudes on the defensive line, but I expect a lot of outside stuff, jet sweeps, outside zones, things like that, screen passes, all designed to make the defensive linemen run a little bit. And it doesn't matter if it works or not. We need them to run because it's going to open up other parts of the game. If we get to the point where we are starting to gash that defensive line, it's because the screens and the jet sweeps and the outside zones and things where the defensive linemen were supposed to run actually worked. We need to get those starters off the field, period. Because those guys are really good. Now, offensively, I think our defense matches up fairly well, honestly, with A&M's offense. Ole Miss this season has struggled mightily with dual threat quarterbacks until Malik Willis. They just completely gave up the run to the running backs in order to keep Malik Willis contained. He had 27 carries for 72 yards, 9 sacks. He threw 3 interceptions. They did their job. Held Liberty to 14 points. But in doing so, that kind of gave up the run game because every play and everything you were calling was keying on Malik Willis. And to be honest, you should have been because he was all that they really had. And, they gave up some running games and that was the reason why. It ended up being they scored 14 points. So I say that to say this. Zach Calzada is more of an old-style, statuesque pocket passer. He's got a big arm. But he doesn't have necessarily the mobility that we are used to from that position, which is a positive, which means the defense will be called to stop the run a little bit. And then they'll kind of press up and do what they need to do. A&M's going to run the ball out of the I formation. Jimbo's offense looks a lot the same as it did with Jameis Winston at Florida State. He kind of does what he does. It's like a pro-style offense that looks a little bit different, but it's not really different. Who knows? But we'll see what happens. Ole Miss leads the nation in sacks. Zach Calzada's in the game. So the trick is to get A&M to third down, third and long. So you're going to have to stop the run. So you're going to see in this 3-2-6 because it's a thing and we're sticking with it. Now, just because it looks like there's a 4-man box doesn't mean there's only 4 players in run fitting. These guys are hyper aggressive going back into the box, and you would think they'd be susceptible to play action pass, but they're playing cover 2 behind it. So the middle safety of the 3 in the back is the extra player in the box. That's a box player. Even though it's 7 yards from the line of scrimmage, it's a box player. The design is to be hyper aggressive and flow to the line of scrimmage. If it's a pass, to drop back and you play that robber position, kind of. Defensive ends pinch in. Nose tackle takes a gap. Middle linebacker takes the other. That's 4 of a run fit. If you're worried about the run game with this defense, defensive ends pinch in. Nose tackle takes one of the A gap. Linebacker takes the other. And the other linebacker that we have is kind of flowing. So the weakness of this defense is off tackle. Understand that going into this. The weakness of this defense is off tackle. And that's where a lot of plays goes because it is important that we flow quickly up to the line of scrimmage because that is just the weakness. They're going to do really well against outside runs because they're so fast. They're going to do really well against inside runs because they pinch in and do what they need to do with the run fits. That's how that 4 looks. And the weakness is going to be the off tackle play, the old school probably belly play or off tackle or something like that. Is going to be the weakness of this defense. And that's where Ole Miss gets gashed from time to time. That is what it is. But in doing what they're doing, they're not going to call that play over and over and over again because it ends up being like LSU, who ran off tackle as well, but the defense used its predictability basically against them and basically shut down the run altogether. So I imagine they're going to try to literally play a similar game plan to what they did against LSU. We'll see what happens with Calzada. I do expect them to get out. They're averaging 28 points a game. I think they get there. Now, can we score 31 is the question. That is going to be the question of this game. Because that defense, there's some dudes on that defense. There genuinely are some dudes on that defense. And it'll be interesting to say. If we get Braylon Sanders back, if Dontario is able to play, even the confidence from Dennis and John Rice Plumlee provide additional elements to this pass game. Kiffin wasn't joking yesterday when he talked about the team being the most improved team in the world from the last game of the season to the bowl game. Because there's several rules and development that is happening. It's absolutely happening. What we witnessed last week to Dennis Jackson was potentially a big moment. And he's a guy that has a chance to run by some people against A&M. Because the weakness of A&M is kind of their secondary. Their defensive line, like I said, is animals. Absolutely. The front seven is fantastic. The back end of their defense is somewhat suspect. And when I say that, I mean they're still good, but relatively speaking, it's a weakness. So, looking at that. So, Ole Miss's defense. Ole Miss is first in the nation in sacks. They got 34. They had 15.5. Let's bring this up real quick because I want to talk about this a little bit. So, right there you see the stats. On the left, you've got the 2020 defense. On the right, you have the 2021 defense. Rushing defense, 2021 is giving up about 10 yards less a game, even with the obvious hole that I was telling you about with off-tackle plays. They're giving up about 100 yards less a game passing. That leads to about 100 yards less a game total defense. They have more interceptions than last year with two games left to be played. They have 20 more sacks than they had last year. Their third down percentage is better by 7%. The red zone's about the same. Their TFLs, they've gotten 20 more TFLs this year, and they're giving up 11 points less a game. Now, why am I doing that? Well, there's this goalpost that is happening between people that cover Ole Miss. And I understand why it's happening. It's because they're just such in the loop of what happened this game and take that to the next game, and it's such a small box of what's going on. But you see this thing talking about before the Tennessee game, they talked about Ole Miss's dismal defense. And I just tweeted out, it's like, well, if this is dismal, what they call last year's unit? So here you can see that improvement is absolutely being made. Even though we do not have the personnel recruited to play this style of defense. Okay? We do not have the personnel recruited to play this style of defense. I'll let you marinate on that for a second. We're recruiting guys that can play that. Real similar. You have rangy guys. You have Xavier Harris, a big guy in the middle. Jarrell Stinson, all these defensive guys. Jarrell Stinson looks a lot like Tysheem Johnson in high school. And you see players designed to play this. There's going to be box safeties in this defense. There's going to be two of them. And one of them for the foreseeable future will be Tysheem Johnson. The next one will be recruit. Maybe it's Jalen White. Who knows? Jalen White is a 6'3", 200-pound guy that runs like a deer that is not going to get recruited playing quarterback. He's not going to get recruited playing DB, but he's a tweener. And a tweener from this defense can be fitted in. So he has a chance to grow to where he's 220 pounds, similar to a linebacker. He's ranger, he's long, and he's really fast. So let's wait until that becomes the norm before we pass judgment. Because so many people want to immediately pass judgment on what Ole Miss's defense is doing. Like I said, I'm leaving this up here for a while for a reason. Because everybody needs to see the difference in these numbers and the improvement that was made. At the beginning of the season, people were saying, if Ole Miss's defense could just rank 90th, what would this team look like? I myself did things like, Ole Miss has a 60th ranked defense. What does this look like now? And all of those stories happened in the preseason because of how bad the defense was. We're talking about like 118 out of 128 in scoring defense, 38.3. Now, this year, We are at 77 right now at 27. And it's also a logjam. If Ole Miss's defense was able to put in more performances like they did against Liberty, it would improve fairly quickly, and they could end up in the 60s. Yeah, I mean, it's not outside the realm of possibility. But that's in 1 year. They fixed this thing in 1 year to the point where it's a mediocre defense. It's not a bad defense. It's not a good defense. It's just a mediocre average defense, which is before the season what we were asking for. If we can just get to mediocre, if we can just get to average, we might be where we want to be. We can do some pretty awesome things if that would just happen. And it is happening. And we're 7-2. The only ones we lost were games that honestly Lane kind of panicked in offensively. Not necessarily the defensive fault. Lane kind of panicked offensively. Against Auburn, they got stopped at about the 15 to 10 yard line 3 times and threw an interception in the red zone. If you kick field goals all four of those times, that's 12 points. Look at the margin of victory for Auburn. It's not hard to figure out. That's a game where Ole Miss absolutely beat themselves. And there's going to be games that Lane calls the game a little bit like a 12-year-old playing Madden. I get that. He did the same thing against Alabama. And, you know, it kind of comes with the package. Me and my dad was talking about this weekend. And he mentioned how Johnny Vaught at Ole Miss used to like to punt on third down because his defense was so good. And they would just play field position over and over and over again. Old timers will figure that out. But they would punt on third down over and over again. I think they punted on third down on the Billy Cannon return, if he told me correctly. I'm not quite that old. But Lane Kiffin goes for it on fourth down. So it's an interesting dichotomy of Johnny Vaught doing things that was a little bit different back then to Lane Kiffin doing things that is a little bit different right now. And it's all for the positive, and analytically it's going to work out in the end more than it's not. The two losses that was at Alabama and at Auburn, 2 ranked teams, that's nothing to sniff at. There's not a bad loss that they've had on the schedule. They play A&M this weekend. They're going to be ranked tonight somewhere probably around 11th. Ole Miss is probably going to be about 12th. I don't know exactly where it would fall because it's not necessarily ranking and it isn't based on last week, so we'll see what it looks like. But the student section is sold out. It's a game that we absolutely can win. Will we win? Who knows? But it's a game we can win. It's a game right now that I'm willing to predict us winning. I expect some of the guys to make a jump and come back. Some of the starting 3 wide receivers. I expect Chase Kelly, or not Chase Kelly, this has Casey Kelly, half Chase Rogers, by the way. I expect Casey Kelly to have a little bit of a day as a way to kind of torture linebackers a little bit. Behind, you're going to see a little bit of zigzag. But we'll see how it goes in Oxford. Game day in town. It's going to be a lot of fun watching that. So, all right. Before we get out of here, I spent a lot of time talking about that, but I want to talk about it tonight. Ole Miss plays UNO and opens their basketball season. Everybody talks about the narrow win over Trevecca. Honestly, an exhibition game just does not matter at all. Everybody always expects every game you to win by 50, and they just don't have time for anything else. So be it. Whatever. But tonight, the Ole Miss plays the Privateers. I think it's at 6:30 Central, and it'll kind of be interesting to see how this flows. Also, we're trying to discover a name because we are getting ready to start a network. So in this network, we need to figure out what we're going to call it. And what we're going to do is find a whole bunch of people that are currently in other networks that can, do that to kind of join this one. We'll work with streaming. We'll do everything is on the table for them. And it'll be kind of interesting to see what actually comes of it. See. And it could be a little bit of fun because we have a nice thing building up. After the New Year is when it's going to hit, but we're going to try and do it outside the New Year as well. What's going on? Because wherever you are, you'll be able to enjoy this content and what's going on. And we're going to create a YouTube channel we probably already have a YouTube channel that's a little bit of a catch-all, and we're going to start catching some content and make a full-size and an Ole Miss only, and whatever we need to do. So it's going to be pretty cool, and I'm looking forward to that. But Ole Miss plays the Privateers tonight. It's a game. I get to see Jamin Brakefield for the first time. I get to see Deshaun Ruffin for the first time. I'm curious to what the team will look like. They're talking about a new style of play. Jarkel is the undisputed really leader of this team, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. It's a game that I expect Ole Miss to win. I mean, why wouldn't I expect Ole Miss to win this game? But it's a game where I can see that there could be a little bit of struggle in the opening of the season. So we'll see how it goes. I'm expecting them to run a little bit tonight. I'm expecting the defense to be equally as hardcore. And in doing so, there's a chance to absolutely squeeze some of these G5 teams. So that'll be interesting to see. I'm probably going to give you guys a couple of minutes back. I hope everybody had a good time today. And in doing so, I hope everybody's safe. As we get ready for game day, the student section is sold out. The general admission section, or the sections around the stadium, they're still trying to sell those out. Those will sell out by the game. But it is what it is. It's going to be a lot of fun. The last time we had game day, I went to it. It was a pretty cool thing. And the Grove was just like nothing to mess with. I ended up watching the pick segment from the student union because of how crowded it was in the Grove. It was absolutely nuts. So I hope everybody has a good time. I'll see you tomorrow. Tonight, maybe Best of the West, maybe not. I don't know. But I'm also recording Biscuits and SEC preview, and Bill Flower talking ball. So I'll record those today as well. But like I said, it's going to be a little bit fluid moving forward when it comes to shows until you figure out what we're doing. And also I have in December, I have a bunch of treatment, and just, life is happening to people. So just be patient. And until then, we'll see you tomorrow. Hope everybody has a good day. And of course, hotty toddy.